Hello, friends of the Real Supernatural Cases channel. Before we start, don't forget to leave a like on this video and subscribe to the channel. Stay until the end, because the outcome of this story is truly incredible. So, without further ado, let's get to our suspenseful and mysterious account. It was a cold and rainy day in the small town of São Brás. The wind howled at the hospital windows, and the storm increased the feeling of discomfort. For a long time, there had been stories circulating about the nurse who drugged patients, making them disappear without a trace. They say it all started when a young nurse named Margarita was hired to work at the hospital. She was a beautiful woman, with black hair and penetrating eyes. Many patients admired her, but there were also those who felt a chill down their spine when crossing her gaze. Margarita seemed to be a dedicated professional, but soon rumors began to arise about her strange behavior. She spent hours locked in the medicine room and was sometimes seen walking through the corridors with an enigmatic smile. Some people said they heard whispers and laughter coming from the rooms of comatose patients. The disappearances began shortly thereafter. First, it was Mr. Joaquim, who was recovering from surgery. His bed was suddenly empty, and no one could explain what had happened. Then it was the turn of the young Isabella, who was about to be discharged. The families of the missing patients sought answers, but the hospital and authorities seemed unable to solve the cases. Margarita's colleagues began to suspect her. The nurse had become increasingly distant and reserved. Her eyes seemed to hide a dark secret, and she seemed to observe everyone with a disturbing intensity. Many believed that Margarita was involved in the disappearances, but no one could prove anything. Tension grew in the hospital, and the employees lived in a constant state of fear. It was as if an evil presence hovered in the air, making the atmosphere heavy and oppressive. Patients felt insecure, and many asked to be transferred to other institutions. It was when Dr. Mateus, a young doctor who had just arrived in town, decided to investigate the strange events. He had a brilliant mind and a fearless heart and was determined to unravel the mystery. Dr. Mateus began to analyze the medical records of the missing patients and to interview his colleagues. However, with each step he took, the mystery seemed to deepen even further. One night, while everyone was asleep, Dr. Mateus decided to take a walk through the hospital corridors, hoping to find some clue that would lead him to the truth. He walked silently, with his heart beating fast in his chest. The dim light of the corridors cast sinister shadows on the walls, and the sound of the storm outside increased the atmosphere of terror. That's when he saw Margarita. She was standing in front of an elderly patient's room, holding a syringe. Her face was pale, and her eyes shone with a terrifying intensity. Dr. Mateus hid behind a pillar and watched the scene, trying to control his breathing. Margarita entered the room and approached the patient, who was sleeping deeply. She raised the syringe and, with a cruel smile, injected the liquid into the serum running in the man's vein. Then she left the room, closing the door carefully. Dr. Mateus waited a few minutes before entering the room. The patient was still sleeping, but his breathing had become slower and heavier. The doctor examined the syringe and realized that the liquid was a powerful sedative, capable of putting a person into a deep coma. With a heavy heart, Dr. Mateus left the room and followed Margarita through the corridors. He saw her enter the medicine room and lock the door. The doctor approached and put his ear to the door, trying to hear what was happening inside. He heard the sound of glass breaking and a sinister laugh. Then, a cold and distorted voice echoed through the hallway. "Do you think you can stop me, doctor? I am beyond your reach. I am the shadow that lurks in the darkness, the hand that squeezes weak hearts. No one can stop me." Dr. Mateus felt a chill run down his spine. He knew he had to act fast to save the patients and expose Margarita. The doctor ran to the nursing station and picked up the phone, calling the police. They promised to send a car immediately. While waiting for the police to arrive, Dr. Mateus decided to confront Margarita. He knocked on the door of the medicine room, demanding that she come out. The nurse opened the door with a diabolical smile on her face. "What do you want, doctor?" asked Margarita, in a calm and threatening voice. "I know what you did to the patients, Margarita. I saw you drug them. And I know you are behind the disappearances," replied Dr. Mateus, firmly. Margarita laughed and denied the accusations. She said the doctor was going insane and that there was no evidence against her. Dr. Mateus knew he had to find something that connected the nurse to the crimes before the police arrived. He asked Margarita to accompany him to the file room, where the medical records of the missing patients were kept. Upon arriving at the file room, Dr. Mateus began to search for evidence that incriminated Margarita. He sifted through piles of documents, while the nurse watched him with a look of contempt. Then, in one of the drawers, he found an old and dusty diary. Dr. Mateus's heart raced when he realized that the diary belonged to Margarita herself. He opened the diary and began to read the pages, revealing the nurse's dark and disturbing thoughts. Margarita described in detail how she drugged patients and how she enjoyed seeing them disappear. She wrote about her desire to control life and death and how she believed she was above human justice. When Dr. Mateus read aloud the passages from the diary, Margarita's face contorted into an expression of anger and fear. She tried to snatch the diary from the doctor's hands, but he backed away and continued reading. The nurse screamed, threatening Dr. Mateus and saying he would never leave that room alive. It was at that moment that the police arrived. They heard the screams and ran to the file room, finding Dr. Mateus and Margarita in the middle of a fight. The officers handcuffed the nurse and took her into custody, while the doctor handed over the diary as evidence of the crimes committed. Margarita was tried and convicted for kidnappings and attempted murder. During the trial, other macabre stories about the nurse came to light, which seemed to corroborate the idea that she was driven by an insatiable desire for power and control. With the end of the trial, the hospital of São Brás returned to normal, and the patients and staff could breathe a sigh of relief. Dr. Mateus was considered a hero for unraveling the mystery and saving many lives. The legend of the nurse who drugged patients became just a story to tell on stormy nights. And so ends our account full of suspense and mystery. If you liked this story, don't forget to leave a like and share with your friends. Stay tuned to the Real Supernatural Cases channel for more amazing stories like this.